Thank you, Qaid, for spending some time today with coffee and some conversation about sales.
Yeah.
And you raised an issue that I've heard from other small companies literally in the last 3 weeks, where they're starting to find opportunities to sell virtually to regions and industries that they never would have considered before. And that's a big change. And you mentioned you're having that same experience. So I thought, let's just have a discussion about how it's affecting you and your business. So why don't you tell us about yourself, and then we'll just talk about what your experience has been.
Sure. So TalentMarketplace is an online recruitment platform specific for building IT project teams. So in the past, we had this, how you and I connected was we had this pay per hire model that was doing pretty well. We've been at it for 4 years. It's some great clients. And then we had a new client come on board that is basically having us build out a talent pool just for them. And that was something that we wanted to and could actually expand outside of Vancouver, where we have, a 4,000 person talent pool. Now we can go build that out pretty much anywhere, as long as they sign on a SaaS basis rather than a pay per hire basis.
Typically, what I would find with a business like yours is that people would want to have an opportunity to sit down in the same office with you.
Yeah.
And I think we think of ourselves as local providers. How has that worked out for you? I mean, I'm seeing you and I shared some articles from Gartner and from an Adweek that said this is the thing, that virtual selling is changing. It's changing us all, the inside salespeople. And it's expanding our ability to go to new markets. And you mentioned when we were talking about this, do it more quickly.
Yeah.
Push through opportunities and get to the end more quickly. So how's that playing out for you?
Yeah, so we have kind of an interesting almost case, because we'd just started the process of selling outside of Vancouver prior to COVID happening. So we're talking, January, we just started launching those campaigns. And I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I noticed two things. We were launching in Toronto and in the United States. The two things I noticed was, one, response rates started going up. I think a lot of people after COVID, because I think a lot of people would just see that, we're not local to Toronto or San Francisco or Seattle. And that was an immediate no for the nature of this business. But then as COVID started to happen and everyone was now the same distance away from each other, there was no expectation of a lunch or coffee, although I would offer to Uber Eats someone a coffee or lunch, which is a cool little tactic. Feel free to use that. What I noticed was, in addition to the response rates going up, nobody asked the question that I'm sure tons of salespeople hear is, when's the next time you're in town? Or, when can you come by and we can meet you in person and you can meet my boss? There was none of that. It was, if it went well, the next step was, a next step video chat with myself, my boss, and any other key stakeholders who need to be in the room for that demo. And I mean, that's a huge difference when you think about, the scheduling effort, just the process of going over there and not being able to take other meetings. There's a lot of efficiencies that drive out of that. You have this new and unique offering. Do you think that plays into that conversation at all? You mentioned San Francisco and Seattle. I mean, if I had to pick two markets where a SaaS-based strategy would jump out at them, that might be it. Yeah, that definitely is part of it. And I think beforehand, the hesitation was often around, they haven't done this locally. Although we have a great case example here, it was just, we haven't done this locally, industry aside, it was more that just, you haven't done it where we are. And that part of the conversation has just disappeared.
Your presentation changed? In other words, around, quite frankly, is it more transparent? And do you get through other challenging issues more quickly? Because people are later on in the buying cycle, apparently, when you're talking to them.
Yeah, and I think you and I were just speaking about this before you hit record, but the meetings are so much more efficient. Now, my background's project management, so I've always been a very process-heavy salesperson. That's the only way I was able to get good at it. And what I found was that process helps a ton, because no one wants to just hang out at a Zoom call. You know, it's not like you're taking someone out to a restaurant or a coffee shop or something like that, and there's, you know, sights and sounds, and you can have different kinds of conversations. It's more focused around action, and asking key questions. And I was on a call, you know, last week, and on the buying side, that was pretty much the expectation for the call was, we're going to run through your metrics. I want to learn more about your past successes. And if all that goes well, I'll consider taking it to my boss. And it's been the case for the last several meetings I've had. I've just been so much more efficient. So presentation, meeting structure, it's all approximately the same, but I'm able to stay on track a lot more over these digital meetings than I was when it would be an in-person discussion.
Do you think it's going to last? Are we in this kind of weird bubble where people are doing things like this? How much do you think this is a permanent change in how people look for suppliers and partners, and then go about buying and keeping a relationship going?
It's a really great question. I think that it will last to a pretty major extent, and the reasons I have for that is there's a lot of people who just refuse to buy unless you were in person. And now they've been forced to adopt that. And some of that, you know, they're probably still going to prefer to see people in person, but they now have that propensity to do so without seeing people in person. So on the buying side, I think there's more openness to buying from people you haven't met in person. On the flip side, I think a lot of salespeople, you know, if they want to keep their jobs during this time, they've had to learn it, whether or not they're good at it, whether or not they've, you know, spent 20, 30 years in the business and, you know, are used to just doing the in-person thing. They've had to learn how to do it, or they're probably about to be unemployed or are currently unemployed.
Right.
Well, the people who are actually offering and doing the selling, I think, are now upskilled, or have had to upskill. And have had to get these new skills, and I expect they're going to keep that in their repertoire moving forward. And I think this was always an eventuality, and this has just expedited that process by several years.
Yeah. You and I were looking at a Gartner survey.
Yeah.
That probably preceded COVID, just because of the timing for their stuff. And they were saying by 2024, we're down to 25% of real in-person meetings. I suspect that's been accelerated by 2 to 3 years in some industries. Are you going to think about your planning differently when you get into that next planning cycle just because of this?
It has expedited some things and reprioritized a couple key things. So our goal for this year was to successfully expand, find an expansion partner in a couple other cities by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And our number one target was to double down into Vancouver. Those things, and start charging on an ongoing basis. Those things have been kind of shifted around, where we've realized, you know, Vancouver is going to do what Vancouver is going to do. We're growing at like a decent pace here. What's more exciting and now more easy to do is seek out partners in another city, which simultaneously helps us get to our revenue targets as well. Yeah. Because there's just more private organizations out in other places. And a lot of those barriers to going to those other places have been removed. Most of those barriers are psychological, but they're non-existent now on our side and on the buying side.
Perfect. So let's do this. This is a really interesting story. Let's check in on it in 90 days and see where you're at.
Yeah.
And just give an update on it. I'm like you. I'm seeing a shift where these are easy conversations to have now with people outside of town, and it's because if you're a service provider, so pretty exciting time. And I kind of find it energizing. I love the idea that this is happening, and as human beings, we're just finding a way to make it happen.
Oh, totally. The adaptiveness of human beings has been on full display during this time, and that has been exciting to watch.
Thank you for your time, Qaid, and thanks for the coffee, and we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good. Thanks very much.
Okay.